Have you ever walked into a meeting, a presentation, or some sort of an all hands that you're getting your team together, and you have this unbelievable moment of feeling like you don't belong? You feel like the guy that they should have picked or the lady that they should have picked is not here. You somehow got here, and it's only a matter of time before people realize that you should be doing something else. To put it simply, you, my friend, have found yourself with a very terrible case of imposter syndrome. And if you think just because you have a fancy title and that you've accumulated some accolades over the years that you're going to get rid of this, you're not. So, today I want to talk to you about why executive leaders are susceptible to imposter syndrome, especially when they communicate. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Sam Linton Show, the podcast designed to help you shift your mindset, find your voice, and change your world. Sam is a pastor, coach, and expert communicator, helping leaders and entrepreneurs like you step into their purpose, speak with confidence, and make a lasting difference. So let's dive in.
All right. Imposter syndrome. I was reminded of a story about my wife. One time I was picking her up from a maternity appointment when she was pregnant with our third child. Notice I had to qualify that because you're like, you didn't go with her to the maternity appointment. And I took her, I dropped her off. I had to go do a hospital visit because I'm a pastor. We were tag teaming and she went up. So I was sitting at the entrance where you pick people up at, the patient entrance. And a lady gets into my car, in the front seat of my car, and just puts the seatbelt on. Never seen the lady before in my life. Didn't have any idea who she was. Didn't have any idea why she was there. For a split second, I thought maybe she was a friend of my wife, and I thought maybe that she had asked her to come to ride home. I don't know. But I said, hi. And she said, hi. I said, what are you up to? And she said, oh, nothing, just a busy day. I said, okay. And then we looked at each other and I said, so what can I do for you? She's like, we got to get going. I said, oh, yeah. I said, where are we going? She's like, the directions are in the app. And then at the same time, my wife comes out and she proceeds to sit in the back seat. And I looked down and looked at my wife. I looked at this strange lady. The strange lady looks at my wife, and she's kind of puzzled. And she looks at me. My wife looks at me as if, like, what are we doing? And I realized in that moment that this lady thought that I was an Uber. And she said, oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was a black Toyota Camry. I said, no, this is a red Ford Taurus. Are you okay? Are you doing all right? Like, the lady was kind of embarrassed, not as embarrassed as I was. I felt like somehow I did something wrong. But my whole point was that the lady shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been in the car. My wife shouldn't have gotten in the back. My wife didn't even, I could have been getting carjacked. My wife was in the back. She would have been along for the ride. So my point is, there has to be a time that we've all had, for most of us, where we feel like we don't belong. That lady didn't belong, and she knew she didn't belong. Well, when it comes to presentations, when it comes to executive communication, this is an especially grave area, the area of imposter syndrome. So let me clear up the definition. And you might say, oh, this is a mindset one. Like, do we really want to? This is really one of the most practical ones because I have yet to meet a high-performing executive that doesn't struggle with imposter syndrome. They're always thinking it. They don't necessarily vocalize it. They don't have the luxury of doing that if they're running a large organization. But they do grapple with it as they speak. And speaking in particular triggers this. It causes the imposter syndrome to kind of flare up in a sense. It's like how certain neurological conditions flare up under stress, right? And they have physiological symptoms associated with it. Well, that's what speaking does. Speaking elevates that imposter syndrome and puts it in the forefront, especially when you're speaking to a large group. So here is a quick and dirty definition. Imposter syndrome is that feeling of self-doubt or fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence about competence and success. So one more time, it's a feeling, a persistent feeling, it's not just a one and done, a persistent feeling of self-doubt and fear of being exposed as a fraud despite evidence of competence or success. So this is the fear of being found out is a big part of it, meaning that you think that if people really knew who you were and they really knew how incompetent you were, they would say, what is this? Why would this person come and speak to me? Like, how in the world, what gives you the right to be there? And you're like, I don't have a right to be there. I'm an imposter, right? So that is what this is. It's actually nothing to do with actual ability, but it has everything to do with how you believe you're being perceived. How you believe you're being perceived. So I cannot tell you what a big problem this was for me when I first started working for the church. I had just turned 21 years old, and the church hired me, and it was a large church for, it was large back then. It's gotten larger since, but it was in the mid 200s, sometimes upper 300s, depending on the attendance. And I would get up to speak. I would get up, and I wasn't preaching, but I would lead. I would do announcements. Every time I got up there, I'm like, how in the world? Like, I felt like somebody gave the keys to a Ferrari to a toddler. And then I'd have the other pastor who was there since he founded it for 20 some years. And there I was, and I was barely alive for as long as he was in the ministry. So my imposter syndrome was over the top. So why that is a benefit to you is because I had to learn really early how to deal with this, because if I didn't get it under control, I knew I wasn't going to last in that role. So I had to learn some things. And especially with speaking, when I started preaching, when I started teaching, when I started speaking for Dale Carnegie 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I started doing those things, it still came up. And when I started my own coaching business, it came up. This imposter, like, what are you doing here? What do you have to say? What do you have to do? That's imposter syndrome. But speaking always is a catalyst for it. It brings it up. You're because there's a couple reasons. And I'm going to tell you why. All right, I'll give you the reasons. Number one, when you're speaking, you are visible. And visibility increases vulnerability. So when you're speaking, you are, whether you want to be or not, the center of attention in a sense, meaning that somebody gives you a microphone. Like, I have a microphone I wear when I speak. Sometimes we'll have to hold a microphone. Like, eyes are on you. We spoke not too long ago at the church. I told you we had all our leaders there. We had 250 people there. So that's 500 eyeballs looking at you. And it's easy to be like, what are these 500 people, what 500 eyeballs want to get out of me? Like, what kind of value can I offer? I'm a mess, right? So it amplifies. That exposure elevates your vulnerability. When you are working at a computer and you have a slide deck and you're doing hiring and the things that you normally do, and you're writing a budget sheet or whatever, well, frankly, it's easy to stay behind the scenes. You're a secret service agent. When you're having one-on-ones and when you're looking at org charts and when you're trying to examine how a project is going to run, nobody knows you're doing that. But when you step up and you have to do a sales pitch or you have to have a meeting, an all hands, now everybody sees all that you have done. So it raises the stakes and it causes you to start to get in your head. Next of all, the reason why this increases imposter syndrome, and I hate this one in particular, is you have seen people speak one or two times and you go, oh, they are a natural. They are a natural. So you'll be invited to somebody else's corporate event, or you'll have some sort of maybe team building exercise, and you'll see a speaker come up and they get up, or somebody that does some of the stuff that I do working with people like this. And and they get up and they speak, and you're like, oh my god, oh, I can't speak. They're a natural. Look at them. Look at them. I can't speak like that. That's not how I speak. Every time I speak, I'm sweating, I'm clammy, I'm having a panic attack, I'm all these things. So this idea of being a natural is a myth. And the only reason why you're saying that is twofold. Number one, you're thinking about how you're perceived, and you can't even tell, because remember, if you have imposter syndrome, you can't even really know. You don't really look at the receipts. Instead, you're making up the perception. But secondly, you're discounting and probably reading into their experience. You might be saying, oh yeah, they're a natural. You have no idea how many times they gave that speech. You have no idea how many thousands of times they've addressed people. You have no clue how frequently they speak. So in my experience, it's just mine, I have seldom come across a natural speaker. I don't want to say they don't exist. I think they exist. But every speaker that I've ever met, myself included, requires some sort of training, some sort of correction. So not just that person, they have a natural gift for gab. No, they don't have a natural gift for gab. They've been speaking for decades. They've been communicating for years. They've had to do hostile situations. Of course, they come across as natural because they are doing it. It's like somebody that puts together, it's like a brain surgeon. You'd never say that about a brain surgeon. Oh, he's just natural. He just cuts open my skull and fixes what's broken in there and then puts my skull back together. No, he went to school for that. He went to residency for that. He worked it. He has his chops because he's done all the work. Now, some people have natural proclivities, maybe natural interests. You could say that. He was always interested in speaking. He was always interested in seeing how things work, whatever. But the natural appearance comes from experience and nothing more. Experience and nothing more. Great speakers are trained. They're not born. So my encouragement about that is you could easily become a natural speaker. Just speak whenever you get a chance. Somebody says, hey, do you mind speaking? Somebody asked me if I'd cover something for them next week at a meeting. Yeah, I'll do it. I could speak for that. Yeah, I'll do that. I could do that. Who cares? Because I always am looking for opportunities to sharpen up my game. Natural order, that's a lie. Okay, here's a third one, I should say. Third reason why speaking explodes imposter syndrome. You are afraid that they're going to find out that you don't know what you should know. That if they ask you the question, you're not going to know. That you should know, and people think you should know, and then when you're speaking, you're like, ooh, I don't know this. Now, this also leads to one of our biggest presentation roadblocks, which is over-preparation. We've talked about this. But this fear of being found out for not having the knowledge, it happens as a result of speaking being a form of an exam. In a sense, speaking is like your SAT test. Because you're really not going to have a chance if I'm speaking unless it's like a workshop where you're talking and you're like, so let me tell you the 3 reasons about imposter syndrome. Oh, hold on. Let me see one. What was the first one? All right, give me like 5 minutes. I'm going to research that. And I'm going to look over my notes. Like, you're not going to be able to do that as a speaker. It's not going to happen. Or your speaking career is going to be very short, or nobody's going to ever ask you to lead a meeting again. But this fear of being found out is because you feel like your words have to prove that you know enough to be there. And that's not true either. Because nobody knows as much as you know in most cases about the situation that you're speaking of. And especially if you're an executive, you're not supposed to know. Like, I don't want to. There's things going on at the church right now. I pride myself that I don't know what those things are. Not bad things, but there are things that leaders have taken ownership of, and they're transforming different things that are going on in the church. I don't know what they're doing on Saturday. I don't know what they're doing during church, but are they still under my leadership? Yeah, I'm there to help them. I'm there to offer support to them, resources for them. That's what I'm there to do. But I am also to get out of their way. And so, of course, at any given moment, even in the organization that I manage, I don't know everything that's going on at any given time. Now, if you're smaller in scale, if you have a smaller organization, that's a little bit different. Then you are going to find that you have to know everything that's going on. But as the organization grows, the only way it scales is if you know less. I'm saying all this, now we're into management philosophy, but I'm saying all this to say, as a leader, you might not know everything. As the executive, you might not know how the copy paper toner is, or how the copy toner is replenished. You might not know that, and that's okay. But when you're speaking, that fear comes up. It's like, oh, they're going to ask you. Somebody's going to ask you about that toner. And you're like, I don't know. I think it's in a bottle. I don't. And you're going to feel like the biggest failure because imposter syndrome always wants you to believe that you don't belong. And then last but not least is comparison culture. We have a comparisonitis. Comparisonitis. There should be a medicine for this, but there is not. If I invented one, I would make a lot of money. But comparison is when you will look at how somebody else speaks. This is very similar to that natural speaker, but you'll look at how somebody else speaks and you will see people having rock star moments or people that speak at trade shows and they come in and even other speakers and you're like, oh man, I can't do that. Why do they get to do that? And you'll start to compare where they are versus where you are. One of the things that boggles my mind is when I coach people, and this is not me bragging because it's not, but because I don't look at myself this way, but I'll have executives that I'm working with, and they'll say, oh, I don't know how you do this. Like, I don't know how you're able to do this and be able to speak so well or understand how to speak so well. And I say, look, if I had to do what you had to do and have 300 people under me with spreadsheets and I have to do press releases and I have to set the standard when it comes to production lines. Dude, this is what I do. So of course I'm going to be good at it. Of course you're good at what you do. But speaking is a different type of skill. It doesn't necessarily come because you're good at your job. Those two are two different things, especially if it's a data-heavy, data-intense skill or a skill set that you've mastered. So comparing is going to do next to nothing. So a couple things, and I've blathered on here. Okay, I'll give you some practical stuff here that you should do. So first one is you have to remember that speaking is never really about you to begin with. If you're focused on you, then you lost the point. It's about the audience. It's about your team. It's about the people that you bring on. It's about the sales prospect and how they are experiencing what it is that you're telling them. Next of all, you can't be an effective leader and be a poor communicator. Sorry. Leadership requires visibility and you have to get out from under it. So there are people who are like, hey, I want to lead, but I don't want to ever speak or deal with people or speak in a group. Then I don't know what organization you're going to thrive at because you have to be able to communicate to large swaths of people at times, a lot of information to give them the ability to move and do well. That doesn't mean that you won't one day have a position where you can outsource that. But I'm saying is you have to be able to communicate in some way, and leadership requires you to be visible. And the other thing you have to realize is preparation and coaching does not mean that you aren't professional. So if you require more preparation and you need coaching, that doesn't mean that you're like, oh, I'm an executive. I built this company from, $20,000 a year to $2 million a year, and I can't. That doesn't mean that just because you need help in the speaking area that you are a failure as an executive. In fact, I almost exclusively work with executives. That's my main group that I deal with. And so they need help. I need help. As a speaking coach, I have coaches. I've been coached. I have coaches. I have people that speak into my speaking all the time. So that doesn't mean I'm less professional. Oh man, that guy, he went to a coach. What kind of a loser is he? No, I care about my craft. I care about doing better. I care about doing this better to help you more. So that's what I do. So if you would like me to help you, podcast@samuellinton.com. Love to get you on my schedule for this fall, do some coaching, some training for you. I have some traveling things that I'm going to be working on this fall, but I have some time on my schedule if you're interested. I would love to be your coach. Now, what do we do to get out from under this? I'm going to give you a couple final thoughts. All right, number one, anchor yourself in evidence and not emotion. It's not about how you feel, it's about what is true. The fact is, if you are given the privilege of being in front of a group of people, you have achieved some measure of success. To a degree. I don't know what, but you do. You know why you're there. You know work you've put in. You know projects you've brought into fruition. You know all that. So look at the evidence. I am here because I accomplished blank. I am here because I serve blank number of people. I am here because I am able to blank. Be very, very evidentiary based. If you're going to have a problem with this, ask the people closest to you what you have done that's worth talking about. Not critics, but the people that would stand in line and cheer you. Tell them, what is it that I do well? Like, what's my thing? Get that evidence and repeat that evidence to remove the imposter syndrome. Next, stop thinking about yourself entirely. Focus on the audience. It's a hack, but it's also the greatest way to become an amazing communicator. Don't focus on how you feel about doing it. Focus on what the audience is experiencing. Hey, what do you think about this in the front, John? Hey, John, what do you think about what we're doing here? What do you think? Like, focus on a person at a time. Stuff that we've already talked about over the last 20 some episodes, right? Focus on getting them engaged. Focus on their well-being as you're moving through your talk. And stop thinking about yourself. And then another thing that you could do, and this, again, all of these are small things, but you want to practice small wins. Don't just wait until you have the November all-hands meeting where there's 200 people, but look for how you communicate in the mini breakouts with your team or your executive team. Look at how you communicate when you're working one-on-one with someone. Try to get a big win in there about how you communicate. Try to do it and try to do some some stretches, some stretching goals of maybe some risks you would take at speaking when the stakes are lower. And then when the stakes are higher, you'll have the confidence to say, I belong here and I can do this and this is no big deal. And then there's a million of these, but Google confidence rituals. Maybe some things you could do, some affirmations. I'm not big into affirmations. I like more of the truth stuff. Like, this is what I've done. This is what I always, for me personally, I'll write down things that God says about who I am in the scriptures, what God says about people that follow him in the scriptures. That's one of my confidence rituals that I try to get out of myself completely and focus on the fact that he has put me somewhere. That's one of my rituals. But when I had panic attacks for 9 months, this was back in 2016, I thought I was going to have to resign from the church. I had very specific and pun moderately intended religious rituals that I would do before I would speak. And if you saw me, I had these affirmations that I would say based on scripture. I had some journaling things that I was doing that I would read out loud in the morning. I had specific things that I would say about myself before I would speak. And so these rituals, they didn't eliminate the anxiety completely, but what it did is it gave my mind a bit of leeway to be able to work it through. So when the imposter syndrome was through the roof, I was more equipped to handle it and bring it under control. So those are some quick things. You're not going to get rid of it completely. And one final encouragement, and this is what I learned from John Acuff, who is a New York Times bestselling writer. Imposters don't feel imposter syndrome. Never in the history of imposters do imposters feel imposter syndrome because they know they're imposters. So if I stood up and I was like, I'm the CEO of Microsoft, this is who I am now, and I stood up in a room and I said, yeah, you didn't know I was the CEO of Microsoft, you didn't know, and I spoke, I wouldn't be nervous at all because I know that this is fake. I'm lying. I know that I don't belong there. It's a knowledge I have. But only people that feel like, oh, maybe I don't belong there, only the people that do belong there feel true imposter syndrome because they do belong there, but the syndrome is causing you to think that you don't. So you belong where you are. God has put you exactly where he wants you. And you have to speak the same level of with the same level of confidence, I should say, as you lead. But until next time, thank you for tuning into the Sam Linton Show. Shift your mindset, find your voice, change your world. We'll see you next time.